Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the IRCGN, the Central Ballistics Lab of the French Gendarmerie Nationale, and we're taking a look at a really cool French Army trials rifle. This is an FN Cal that was tested by the French in the 1970s. So development of the FAMAS began around 1971, but it was paused, that program was paused in the mid-70s to experiment with some foreign rifles that were also available. Like, you know, the FAMAS is having some teething issues going through development, and maybe we should consider just buying something from someone else. So, in particular, between 74 and 77, the French Army would test the M16, the FN Cal, and the HK-33. Now, I have a separate video on the HK-33F adapted to French use, and today we have one of the FNCs that was actually modified, FN Cals, that was actually modified for French Army trials and tested. This is one of the trials rifles themselves. That's one of the cool things about the IRCGN collection here, is they have a bunch of Army trials guns. So the things, if we compare this to the HK-33F trials guns, we'll notice that what the Germans had to do was adapt the guns to rifle grenades and a 3-round burst mechanism. Well, the FN Cal already came with a 3-round burst mechanism as well as regular full auto. So standard from FN, it has a 4-position safety selector: safe, semi-auto, 3-round burst, and unlimited full auto, which is exactly what the French were looking for. That's what they would end up adopting on the FAMAS. But the FN Cal wasn't set up to shoot rifle grenades, at least not the way the French would like. So let's take a look at what they did to this to adapt it to French-style rifle grenades. Sorry for the interruption. Just want to say that today's video is brought to you by Headstamp Publishing, with an extensive catalog of books on all sorts of interesting and esoteric small arms, everything from World War II small arms to Imperial Japanese swords to the earliest of revolvers and Cold War battle rifles. There is something at Headstamp for every firearms enthusiast. Check it out. Links in the description text below. All right, so one FN Cal here. Note the pre-existing 4-position selector switch. We have factory markings: FN Herstal, Belgium. It is a Cal 5.56. This is number 8911. For the record, there is a second similarly modified rifle here in the Gendarmerie collection that is number 8915, so just 4 digits off. It also has the same grenade launching modifications, but it's not quite in as nice of condition, so I'm showing you this one. Now, before we actually take a closer look at that rifle, I want to start with this one. This is missing its buttstock, but this is another one of the rifles that was trialed by the French. This is a pattern that came first because it's pretty much a standard FN Cal, at least as far as the muzzle is concerned. It has the regular sort of grenade launcher muzzle brake out here, and then what the Belgians did as their first attempt of making a Cal rifle grenade capable for the French was to put on this folding grenade sight. It's marked Strim. So this is relatively similar to the grenade launching sight that FN put on some of its FALs for customers who wanted that. But what I do is push this button and it allows me to unlock this, and then I have to roll it. Oh, sorry, it's this direction. I roll it out like that, and then I can push it up and lock it in place like so, and you can see range gradations from 100 out to 175 meters. That, I believe, was the initial attempt, and that was not good enough to interest the French Army. So that's when they came back with this system. So first off, instead of just having a standard muzzle brake, they have added what would eventually be used on the FAMAS. This was also used on the MAS 4956. It is a series of lugs on the barrel, and the rear stop here for the rifle grenade can be adjusted forward or back for different ranges. And you can see these rather unusual ranges. I'm sure those were marked after testing. Like, they put in standard spaced notches and then launched some rifle grenades to see how far they would go. The idea here is the farther up this is placed, the less time the grenade spends being propelled by the blank launching cartridge. So the farther back you move this, the longer the range of the grenade. Anyway, they put this on the barrel, and then they gave it a more yet more sort of complicated grenade launching sight. So we have this leaf here now. I can pull it out to the side, and then I pull it back, and it can go up. Sorry, a little tricky to hold this in front of the camera at the same time. There we go. We rotate it up like that, and then we can lock it in to one of a couple different positions depending on the type of grenade that we're using. And then you can see a couple of different aiming points for grenade launching. And then, of course, the whole thing folds down. Pull this up, rotate it around, and it locks down actually pretty compact and conveniently there along the side of the gas block. So that's what the French army was more interested in. We can tell that that's more their style because that's also what the HK trials rifles did. And of course, that's what the FAMAS did, the FAMAS that was ultimately actually adopted. Now there is one other cool element here, and it's the magazine. This looks like it started out life as a standard 20-round magazine. It was, they had an extension welded on it to bump it up to 25 rounds capacity, and a viewing window so that you can actually see how much ammunition remains in it. That's definitely not a standard FN Cal thing. And here in the collection, they only have one of these with the rifles. So probably also something that was experimented with, but not ultimately adopted. They did do some experimenting with transparent bodies for FAMAS magazines. Those were never adopted into actual production or issue either. Unfortunately, I don't have like a trials report at this point to tell you what the pros and cons of the FN Cal were, but what I can tell you is it wasn't particularly successful in the trials. The best contender to come out of these trials was the HK-33F, but that was considered politically not viable for military adoption by the French. Of course, that would change 50 years later when they did adopt an F suffix rifle made in Germany by HK. But that's a separate story. That's the 416F. Anyway, the FNC wasn't super successful. It didn't undergo any further production. The Belgians didn't appear to try to market this to anybody else, or they certainly didn't succeed at marketing this to anybody else. And the FN Cal was fairly quickly replaced by the FNC instead, making this, like all FN Cals are pretty rare rifles today, but very cool to get a chance to take a look at one of the actual French modified test rifles. So a big thanks to the Gendarmerie for giving me access to this guy to film for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.